Hey, these are last couple of study tools that I wanted to tell you about. I find these to be particularly valuable when I'm just doing normal studying and when I'm in downtime and think about school or think about academic issues. These are the things I do. Elaboration is such a cool thing to do, frankly. It's such a useful thing, and I think it helps the overall developing an overall framework. But in general, it's thinking about a concept from all angles, expanding on what you know to examine relationships between that concept and other concepts. And the way you achieve that is by one of the ways you can achieve that is through it's called interrogative elaboration, or I call it Q&A elaboration. And here's how this might work. You start asking yourself why. Why are these the elements of an intentional tort? Why are there different damages regimes for tort and negligence specifically? Why is there joint and several liability? Why is there comparative negligence? What's the differences? Does one protect plaintiffs more? Does one protect defendants more? Why would a jurisdiction want to protect plaintiffs or defendants in negligence case? These are the kinds of sort of second and third tier questions that you can ask yourself about anything. Another example is, why the hell are we learning about chickens? Or why are we debating whether a burrito is a sandwich? It's not about the burrito, it's about the process. What's the process? Why are we using this as an example? Well, it's ostensibly a close call. I don't think so. I don't think burritos are sandwiches. I feel strongly about that. But it's really not about that. It's about exploring how these things are connected, how they work, why they are what they are. And sometimes as you go through that kind of process, you will pick up on brand new insights that help you tremendously. Or you run into a question that seems fundamental that you just don't know. That's exactly the kind of thing you can go to your professor and talk about. And here's an example of elaboration, not the Q&A kind of elaboration that I was talking extensively about there, but it's another kind. It's called, I think, general elaboration, where you don't just say the minimum that you know. You start including as much detail, and you try to make it, not as much detail. Don't include your whole outline, but create ways of talking about and ways of describing these concepts that are thorough, because those are the kinds of explanations that you develop and use on exams later. So this is exactly when you develop those understandings during elaboration and during study time, really. You can develop it with elaboration and in generating your outlines. Sorry, I have issues with transitions and whatever, but it can always be exciting. Here's another tool that different people find effective. With me, not so much, but I know a lot of people who are more visual learners find this to be really effective. It's called dual coding, and that's using both language and visuals to represent information. These kind of polymodal representations can help cement memory formation and analytical depth, because not only do they show the meanings and have the words involved, through the spatial relationship between the concepts, you actually see which ones are related to one another and which ones you can integrate into a more coherent whole. And here's what it might look like when you implement it, not what it actually is. I'm not going to share any comic strips I draw because they're just stick people and I'm awful. But if you can employ actual pictures, drawings, infographics, flow charts, diagrams. I like flow charts, particularly for constitutional law for next year, something to keep in mind. But all of these things work very well. You can also just use a visual representation of how the concepts are related. This doesn't have to be professionally reproduce. This is going to be something you draw by hand, of course. Another example is visualization in concrete examples. So that's when you take an abstract concept and connect it with a specific example, real life or hypothetical, to better understand the application of that concept. Here's what it might look like. It's true that every case you read illustrates an abstract legal concept, and typically one concrete example of its implementation. Take this concept further by coming up with your own hypotheticals. Take it away from the facts of the case. Make up your new facts that apply the same principle of law. Talk them over with yourself, friends, me. You're always welcome to throw hypos past me, or I'm sure your professors would be happy to. And one of the things that we do as professors, and something that you can also do yourselves, is try to make our hypotheticals interesting, something that will help you remember. You can make them funny, change the word, use funny words, use current events, but connecting these things to your own experience and somehow remembering them is really the key in using visualization. It's trying to take these abstract ideas and make them far more concrete. Now I want to tie these concepts together. One easy way is with flashcards, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But first, I wanted to just say that any combination of these study techniques to any degree is going to help. I will strongly suggest that you use all of them in different ways, and you can imagine how those things can work together. First, you practice your rule statements using your outline. Then you try to develop a hypothetical for the material you went over last week. If you come to a hypothetical that you are happy with, that you just want to explore, write an IRAC on it. See how it works. Use your outline to check your rule statements, and then when you're tired of that subject, switch to another, and then or leave on over to contracts, say. Anyway, the number of ways that you can combine these techniques is limited only by your imagination. I hope you feel like you're in Disney World, because I sure feel like Walt Disney. Anyway, let me talk now about flashcards, because they're a very effective way of tying all these things together. First, the difference between making your own and buying flashcards. It's better to make your own, but it can be a very time-consuming experience. So I'm not going to... I recognize everybody has limitations, and that's a tough one to push. So what I would suggest, if you do have the time or inclination to make your own flashcards, do so. By doing that, you really cement the information in your mind just by writing it out. It's really a pretty effective tool. If you buy them, you can use them very effectively for retrieval practice. They're perfect for a ride on the T, ride on the bus if you're doing any public transportation these days. They're great for just killing time between classes when you don't want to read about the news of the day and have 15 minutes to kill. Knock out a couple flashcards. If you are making your own, here's what I would suggest. Put the concept itself on the front of the note card, say mutual assent. And on the back, put at least one of the following. Now, this will depend for you on how your writing is. I am awful. So I would put one of these things on the back, not all of them. If your writing is particularly neat and you don't have a visual representation, you have non-examples and exceptions only, then maybe you could put both on the same card. But for me, I would make 4 different sets of flashcards in essence, ones that have definitions, and then I would have, for the same concept, essentially, another with a visual representation of it, another with an example, and another with a non-example or exceptions. And then I would just use them whenever I had time to kill. It's a very effective way of integrating all of this material, as are all of the study techniques that we've talked about.